Imagine you are driving home on a quiet road at night. You hear a familiar sound, a low, rhythmic thump from somewhere beneath the car. You slow down, pull over, step out. Flat tire. No problem. You open the trunk, lift the floor mat, and reach for the spare. There's nothing there. A repair kit, a small can of sealant, a folded instruction card, and the specific hollow feeling of realizing that the backup plan you assumed was always with you quietly disappeared somewhere between the showroom and the road. This is not a rare experience anymore. How exactly the spare tire vanished from so many new cars, and what does that change actually mean for everyday drivers? The answer involves weight, space, money, technology, and a trade-off that most buyers never knew they were making.
Let's get into it right here on Small Things.
A simple tool with one job. At its core, a spare tire is exactly what it appears to be, a backup wheel ready to replace a damaged one so a driver can keep moving. For most of motoring history, it was unremarkable, heavy, slightly awkward to lift, grimy from whatever the corner of the trunk it occupied. You hoped you would never need it, but knowing it was there was enough. It does one job, no software, no signal required, no expiry date. It worked in a remote desert, on a motorway hard shoulder, on a mountain road with no reception at all. That simplicity is what made it irreplaceable, and exactly what made it easy to quietly remove. From mud roads to modern trunk, it did not begin as a convenience. It begins as necessity. Early automobiles in the late 1800s and early 1900s ran on pneumatic rubber tires that punctured constantly. Roads were unpaved, full of sharp stones and debris, and tires were thin-walled and fragile by modern standards. Some early vehicles were fitted with spare tires mounted externally on the rear or the running boards, not as thoughtful design feature, but because the alternative was abandoning the vehicle on the road. Flat tires were not emergencies, they were routine. As roads improved through the early 20th century and tire technology advanced, punctures became less frequent. But the spare tire stayed. By the time car ownership spread to the post-war mass market, a full-size spare was simply assumed to be part of what a car was. Manufacturers included them without discussion. Buyers expected them without question. Nobody asked whether they were necessary because the question had already been settled for 50 years. The first cracks appeared in 1970s. The oil crisis forced automakers to think seriously about weight and fuel consumption for the first time. A full-size spare, a jack, and a wrench could add 30 to 50 kilograms to a vehicle. Engineers began replacing them with compact temporary spares, narrower, lighter wheels designed only to get a driver to the nearest service station, not for extended use. Drivers called them donuts. They were not ideal, but they were lighter and the fuel-saving matter. Then came the run-flat tires in the 1990s. Reinforced tires with rigid side walls, capable of holding the car's weight even after losing air pressure. If a tire could keep functioning for 50 to 100 kilometers after a puncture. The reasoning went, a spare was redundant. Electronic pressure monitoring systems were added, warning drivers of a pressure drop before the damage became critical. The final push came from electric vehicles. Battery packs occupied the structural floor, leaving almost no room for a spare wheel. In a battery electric vehicle, removing the spare is often not a preference, but it is a packaging constraint. By the early 2010s, the trend had accelerated into mainstream. Today, according to AAA, nearly 1 in 3 new vehicles sold does not include a spare tire of any kind, a feature assumed for a century disappeared from a third of new cars in roughly a decade. What replaced it and how? So, what does a driver actually get instead, and how well does it work? The most common replacement is a tire repair kit, a small can of liquid sealant, and a compact electric compressor that plugs into car's power socket. When a tire picks up a nail or a clean puncture through the tread, the process is straightforward. Attach the sealant can, inject it through the valve stem, inflate, drive slowly for a short distance to distribute the sealant inside, then reinflate to correct pressure. In ideal conditions, this works. The tire seals, holds pressure, and gets the driver to a service station. The critical word here is ideal. Sealant kits can handle one specific type of damage, a small, clean puncture through the tread surface. They are entirely ineffective for sidewall damage, which is common in curb strikes and road debris impacts. They cannot address a blowout. They cannot help if the wheel itself is bent or cracked. They also permanently contaminate the inside of the tire with foam, meaning the tire typically cannot be professionally repaired afterward. It must be replaced entirely. Run-flat tires solve a different problem because their reinforced sidewall holds the car weight even without air pressure. A driver can continue moving after a puncture without stopping at all. The pressure monitoring system alerts the driver, who continues at reduced speed, to a repair facility. No kit, no roadside stop, no changing anything. But run-flat tires carry real trade-offs. They're heavier than standard tires. They produce a firmer, less comfortable ride because their sidewall cannot flex in the normal way, and they're significantly more expensive to replace. A standard tire on a mid-range car might cost 60 to 100 pounds. The run-flat equivalent is often 2 to 3 times that. They also cannot be repaired after a puncture, only replaced, adding to long-term ownership costs in ways buyers rarely anticipate at the point of purchase. Both solutions work within their limits. The problem is that those limits are narrower than most drivers realize, and the situations where neither solution helps tend to be the situation where driver most needs one. It is not just about saving money. The most common assumption about why manufacturers remove the spare tire is that it was a straightforward cost-cutting measure, a way to save money on production while charging the same price for the finished car. That picture is incomplete. The weight argument is real and significant. Under fuel economy standards in the United States and Europe, manufacturers face financial penalties if their vehicle fleets do not meet average efficiency targets. Every kilogram removed from a vehicle improves its fuel consumption, even marginally. Across a production runs of hundreds of thousands of vehicles, the aggregate improvement is measurable. Removing the spare, the jack, and the wrench save 30 to 50 kilograms. That's not nothing. The spade argument is equally real, particularly in electric vehicle. Battery packs occupy the structural floor of most modern EVs, leaving no natural location for a spare wheel. That is not a preference. It is a packaging constraint with no easy solution. The cost saving exists, but it is one factor among several genuine engineering pressures. The more framing is this. Removing the spare allowed manufacturers to solve a cluster of real problems simultaneously. Weight came down, space was recovered, production costs fell, and the availability of run-flat tires and repair kits gave them a reasonable alternative to point buyers toward. What got lost in that cluster of solutions was a simple question. Nobody formally asked the driver whether a lighter, more efficient car was worth the specific kind of vulnerability that came quietly along with it. The road has changed around you. Today, you will find spare tires treated almost like a premium feature, something worth advertising as an advantage rather than simply assumed as a standard equipment. Certain manufacturers, particularly those producing trucks and larger SUVs, still include them as a matter of course. Toyota's truck and off-road lines and most full-size American pickups continue to mount a spare beneath the vehicle or on the tailgate. For vehicles built to travel in genuinely remote areas, the spare has remained exactly what it always was, non-negotiable. But in the broader passenger car market, the spare has quietly become optional in a way that few buyers fully register before driving off the lot. It does not appear prominently in the specification sheet. It is rarely mentioned in the showroom walk-around. It does not appear prominently in the specification sheet. It is rarely mentioned in the showroom walk-around. It is simply absent, and the space it once occupied now holds luggage more comfortably than a spare ever could. Roadside assistance services have expanded to fill some of the gap. Manufacturer plans and apps connecting drivers to help are more accessible than they were 20 years ago. In most urban and suburban environments, help typically arrives within 30 to 60 minutes. The assumption quietly built into the modern car is that you will have phone signal, that help will come quickly, and that the damage will be something a sealant kit can handle. When those assumptions hold, the system works. When any one of them fails, the driver discovers what is no longer in the trunk. The weight of self-reliance. So, why did the spare tire disappear from so many new cars? Because the modern vehicles are solving real problems. Weight, battery packaging, fuel efficiency, production costs, and the spare tire was in the way of solving all of them at once. The trade-off is genuine. Cars are lighter and trunks are more useful. But a spare tire is not just an extra wheel. It is a small piece of independence hidden under the trunk floor. When technology fails, when the phone signal disappears, when the repair kit cannot fix the damage, that simple rubber wheel is the difference between moving again and being stranded. The car around it may be smarter and more efficient than anything built before, but the wheel beneath the floor has never needed to be smart. It only ever needed to be there. If this made you want to check what is actually in your trunk, let us know in the comments and tell us what everyday thing you want us to look at next. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.